Chapter 1. The Dinner Party. I still remember the clink of wine glasses and the soft jazz that floated through the Carmichaels' dining room that night. It was one of those Friday evenings that had become tradition. A small group of us gathered every month or so. Mark and Sarah Carmichael, myself, and usually one or two rotating guests from our old university circle. Familiarity mixed with comfort. No one wore suits. Mark usually grilled. Sarah curated the wine. That evening, the scent of rosemary and garlic was thick in the air, and Sarah, in her linen dress the color of sand, looked as luminous as ever. She moved through the room like she belonged in some French film, barefoot and effortless, pouring wine, laughing too easily. Her laugh always caught people off guard, just a touch too loud, too musical, like she wanted you to notice it. Mark had known her since he was 22, married 10 years now. The kind of couple everyone assumes is unshakable. But that night, something was off, not between them, necessarily, but around them. Like a shift in temperature you feel without knowing why. It was the way Sarah leaned in when she laughed at James Roth's joke, a little too close. The way Mark filled her glass without asking, watching her with something that looked more like habit than affection. And then there was the look Sarah gave me, fleeting, curious, like she was searching for something in my eyes and didn't find it. After dessert, I helped her stack plates in the kitchen. She stood by the sink, swirling her glass with slow circles as if measuring time. "You ever think people stop seeing each other?" she asked, not looking at me. "Like going blind?" I half joked, trying to keep it light. "No," she smiled faintly. "I mean really seeing, noticing, caring." She turned then, finally facing me, her eyes clearer than I expected. I wanted to ask what she meant. I didn't. Moments later, we returned to the dining room, and Mark had put on an old Dylan record. James was already gone. It was just the three of us again. The perfect picture. But I couldn't shake her words. That night, lying in bed, I kept hearing her voice. "Do people stop seeing each other?" And I realized something that should have been obvious. Sarah was disappearing. Chapter 2. Little Glances. The strange thing about infidelity, or the suspicion of it, is that it rarely announces itself with lipstick on a collar or late-night texts. It's usually quieter, softer, a pause before a name, a glance held a second too long, silence in the wrong places. Over the next few weeks, I found myself noticing things I hadn't before. Or maybe I had, and had chosen to ignore them. Mark and Sarah still held hands at parties, still exchanged inside jokes in public. But underneath it all, there was a sliver of tension, a thin thread of something unsaid. It wasn't that they were fighting. It was the opposite. It was how carefully they weren't. One evening, I joined them for a movie night at their place. Just the three of us. We watched a Hitchcock classic, Rear Window, I think. Fitting, in retrospect. Sarah curled up at the far end of the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, sipping white wine like it was water. Mark sat between us, but leaned toward me as he made sarcastic commentary about the film. At one point, I caught Sarah watching him, not with affection, but with absence. Her expression wasn't angry, just gone, like she was observing someone she used to know, like she was remembering a version of him that didn't quite fit anymore. Then, halfway through the film, her phone buzzed. She picked it up quickly, read a message, and smiled. Not the kind of smile you give a friend. It was the soft, internal kind. The kind meant for someone who knows the way you breathe when you're half asleep. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She blinked, realizing I was watching. "Oh, yeah, just Emily from work." She didn't meet my eyes when she said it. Later that night, as I helped Mark put away the dishes, I asked how things were going. Generally, vaguely. He shrugged. "You know, busy. She's been working late a lot, but that's life." There was no bitterness in his voice, no suspicion, just resignation. A man trusting what he's always trusted. But that night, something had shifted in me. I wasn't just their friend anymore. I was a witness. And witnesses always carry weight, even if they don't realize it yet. Chapter 3. Confessions over Whiskey. Mark wasn't the type to talk about feelings. He was a builder, of homes, of furniture, of silences. He measured things twice and spoke only when necessary. That's what made his call that night unusual. "Got anything to drink?" he asked when I opened my door. It was nearly 11. His car was still idling outside. I poured 2 glasses of Lagavulin, the good stuff, the kind you save for real conversations. We sat out on my balcony, wrapped in summer air, the city below murmuring like a half-forgotten song. "She's not cheating," he said without preamble, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. I didn't answer. He hadn't asked a question. "I'd know," he added, more to himself than to me. "I mean, she wouldn't. Not Sarah." His voice cracked just slightly on her name. "She's been distant?" Mark nodded. "Drinking." "Yeah. I don't know. Not in a dramatic way. Just not present. Like I'm talking to a version of her with the sound off." I let the silence sit between us. We drank the rest in silence. He left after midnight, the glass still wet in his hand. Before he walked out, he said something I'd remember for a long time. "Don't tell me if you ever find out something. Just look me in the eyes before you do." And then he was gone. I stood by the window, watching his car disappear into the dark. That night, I didn't sleep, because I had a feeling the worst parts of this story hadn't happened yet. They were coming. Quietly. Chapter 4. The Man in the Gallery. It was a Sunday in early May when I saw her again. Alone, or so I thought. I hadn't planned on going to the gallery that day. I was killing time before meeting a client nearby, and the gallery was quiet, the kind of place people wandered when they didn't want to be anywhere else. That's where I saw her, Sarah. She was standing in front of a large canvas, abstract, crimson and black swirls that looked like bruises on fire. She didn't notice me at first. She was wearing a coat I hadn't seen before, dark green wool, and a scarf even though it was warm out. There was a man beside her, tall, well-dressed in that quiet, expensive kind of way. He stood just close enough that it meant something, but far enough that it could mean nothing. He said something to her, and she laughed, not the laugh she used at parties, not the one she gave Mark. This one was softer, private. They didn't touch, but everything about them was touch. I stepped back into a side room before she could see me. My heart was beating like I'd stumbled onto something sacred or profane. I watched them from a distance as they walked through the gallery, speaking in low tones, never too close. He pointed at a painting and leaned in, and she tilted her head toward him in a way I recognized too well. That subtle, almost involuntary intimacy, the kind that's old already. When they left, they didn't hold hands, but they walked as if they'd done it many times before, like muscle memory. I stood there for a long time after, in front of that same painting. The bruised fire. I didn't know his name. I didn't know where they went. But the silence that followed them out of the gallery felt heavy. Later that evening, I got a text from Mark. "Dinner next weekend? Sarah says we've been hiding lately." I guess she's right. I stared at the message for a while. Hiding. That was one word for it. I typed, of course, and hit send. Because what else could I do? I wasn't ready to break the illusion. Not yet. But the glass had cracked. And it would keep cracking, whether I wanted it to or not. Chapter 5. Denials. I told myself I wouldn't bring it up. I told myself it wasn't my business, that it could have been anything. A cousin, a colleague, a friend. People smile at people. People laugh. But the lie was getting heavy in my chest. The following Saturday, we met for dinner at their place. Just the 3 of us again. Sarah made pasta from scratch, served with basil and lemon zest. She played Nina Simone on vinyl and poured wine like it was celebration. Mark looked better that night. Lighter. He was trying, I could tell. He complimented her dress, touched her back when he passed by her, joked more than usual. And Sarah, she smiled back. She responded. She played the role well. Too well. It was near the end of the meal, when Mark stepped out to take a work call, that the words came out of me without planning. I saw you, I said quietly, my fork resting on the edge of the plate. She didn't look surprised. Gallery on 12th, I added. Last Sunday. You weren't alone. Sarah set her glass down with perfect grace. I know. I blinked. You know I saw you? She nodded, almost imperceptibly. There was no panic, no guilt, no shame, just calm. You going to tell Mark? She asked, her voice measured. I hesitated. Are you? She smiled, not unkindly. He wouldn't believe it. Not from you. Not even from me. That's not true, I said, maybe too quickly. She tilted her head, studying me. Do you think you understand us after all these years? I thought I did. That's the problem. Everyone thinks we're a certain way, including him, including me. There was a pause. She reached for her wine, took a slow sip. I didn't sleep with him, if that's what you want to know, she said. Not that day. I didn't know what to say to that. Before I could respond, Mark walked back in, phone in hand. All good, he said, sitting down. Crisis averted. Sarah turned to him with a warm smile. Good. You've been working too much. He touched her hand. Maybe I should work less. She leaned in and kissed him, light and brief. When she looked at me again, there was something unreadable in her eyes. Not threat, not plea, something in between. Denial, I realized, is not always a lie. Sometimes it's survival. And I had just been made complicit. Chapter 6, The Letters. It happened by accident. I was over at their house on a rainy Wednesday evening. Mark had asked for help fixing a leak under the kitchen sink. It was mundane, routine, the kind of thing old friends do without question. While he rummaged through the garage for a wrench, I wandered into the living room and sat down, waiting. That's when I noticed the box. A small, pale blue box tucked between art books on the shelf, its lid slightly askew. Something about it felt out of place. It wasn't Sarah's style, too plain, too sentimental. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. Inside were letters. 10, maybe more, all handwritten, neatly folded, bound by a thin black ribbon. The ink was dark and deliberate, the handwriting elegant. I unfolded one. You are a fracture I keep stepping into, over and over, and every time I tell myself the fall is worth it. I read another. I hate how much I love the way you vanish. It makes you feel like a secret I was never meant to keep. None of them were signed. None addressed Sarah by name. But I didn't need confirmation. The papers smelled faintly of her perfume. What struck me most was not that she'd hidden them, but that she'd kept them. We had entered a new kind of silence, one where truth sat quietly between us, never spoken, never denied. Chapter 7, Truth in Layers. I didn't plan to follow her. I told myself it was coincidence again. The way I ended up near her office, walking past the coffee shop she liked on 6th and Pine. I know, she said, but sometimes love becomes invisible when it's always there. You stop recognizing it. I let her words settle. There was no excuse in them, just explanation. And Daniel, he's gone. Has been for months. What you saw at the gallery was goodbye. Then why keep the letters? She looked at me, then really looked. Because they remind me of who I almost became, and who I still might be, if I'm not careful. For the first time, I felt the weight of her sadness, not dramatic, not theatrical, just real, quiet, honest. There was no villain here. Only two people who had drifted apart, slowly, invisibly. one looking for air, the other holding their breath. And I was still in the middle, a witness. Chapter 8. The Confrontation. Mark didn't find out by accident. He asked. It was a quiet evening, the kind where the light turns golden before disappearing. We were on his back porch, watching the wind move through the trees. He had a beer in hand. I had water. Neither of us said much. Then he turned to me. Was she in love with him? I didn't answer. He nodded slowly, like he'd been rehearsing this scene in his head. I knew you knew, he added. Weeks ago, you stopped meeting my eyes. I looked down, ashamed, though I hadn't done anything. Or maybe that was the problem. I hadn't done anything. She told me yesterday, he said, voice even. About the letters. The gallery. Daniel. And I asked. He stared ahead. And I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just listened. Are you okay? No, he said. But I'm not broken. That surprised me. He sipped his beer, then added. She told me she never slept with him. I waited. Thing is, he continued, I believe her. And the part that hurts isn't what she did. It's that I didn't see how lost she was. That I let her vanish right in front of me. We sat in silence. Finally, he said, you ever forgive someone not because they deserve it, but because you don't want to carry it anymore? I nodded. Yes. He turned to me, eyes softer than I expected. That's what I'm trying to do. Not for her. For me. Then, after a long pause, he asked, will you come to dinner tomorrow? She asked if we could all sit together. No pretending this time. Are you sure? I'm not sure about anything, he said. But I'm tired of bleeding in private. And that was Mark, a man who'd been betrayed, yes, but who still believed in repair, even if it came in crooked shapes. Chapter 9. Forgiveness. The dinner was quiet. No candles. No music. Just 3 plates, a bottle of red wine, and the scent of roasted chicken and thyme. Sarah looked tired, but composed. Her hair was pinned up loosely, a few strands falling near her face. Mark wore a simple gray sweater and jeans. Neither of them dressed for a guest. I was no longer a guest. We spoke about simple things at first. Work, the weather, a mutual friend's upcoming wedding. It felt mechanical, like the 3 of us were playing roles we no longer believed in. Then, halfway through the meal, Sarah set her fork down and said, thank you for being here. Mark didn't look at her. Not right away. But when he did, he nodded. We need to stop pretending nothing happened. She met his gaze. I know. There was a silence then, the kind that feels like standing at the edge of something deep. I miss you, she said quietly. Mark leaned back in his chair, exhaled through his nose. I know, he echoed. I miss me too. That hurt more than anger ever could. I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was, Sarah said. I'm asking if we can find something new. Something honest. Mark looked at her for a long time, and then at me. Not accusatory, just searching. Then he turned back to her. I don't know if I can forget, he said. But I don't want to throw away 10 years because we lost our way for a while. She blinked once and whispered, neither do I. And just like that, the conversation became real. They talked, really talked, about how it started, the silence, the loneliness, the assumptions, the things that eroded them not with violence, but with time. I sat with them until the wine was gone, and the plates were cleared, and the pain had shifted, not gone, but lighter. As I left that night, Sarah walked me to the door. She touched my arm gently. Thank you, she said, for not judging me when you could have. I did, I admitted. A little. She smiled. Then thank you for stopping. Mark stood behind her in the hallway, his eyes tired but open. As I stepped out into the cool night, I realized. Forgiveness isn't a grand act. It's a quiet decision, made again and again, day after day. Chapter 10. Epilogue, a slower kind of love. A year has passed. Seasons shifted like they always do, with or without our permission. I see them sometimes, Mark and Sarah, usually on Sundays, walking near the lake with coffee cups in hand. They don't hold hands like they used to. But sometimes she brushes her fingers against his sleeve, and he doesn't pull away. Their house looks the same from the outside, but inside, things have changed. Not dramatically, not loudly. The bookshelves are reorganized. The record player sits quietly in the corner. A new photo hangs in the hallway, not of a wedding, but of a quiet moment on their porch, both of them reading, side by side. They didn't restart. They rebuilt. Not everything came back. Some trust, once cracked, never fully returns. But something else took its place, a kind of gentleness. A decision to stay, to learn each other again. Slower this time, without illusion. I visit less often now. They don't need a witness anymore. Only each other. Sometimes I think about the letters. Whether she kept them, burned them, or finally let them go. I never asked. Some things aren't meant to be known. Mark once told me, over coffee, that he no longer sees their love as a straight line. It's more like a loop, he said. A spiral. We come back to the same places, but with more understanding. I think about that a lot. About how love doesn't always look like what we were promised. Sometimes it's just the quiet choice to stay. To see each other, truly, fully, after everything. To begin again, not because you must, but because you still can.